Welcome to Let's Just Be Real with me, your host, Marissa Tong. I'm a multi-passionate creative entrepreneur who's on a journey to create my dream life in a world where adulting just gets too real sometimes. On this podcast, we talk about all things beyond surface level to leave you feeling inspired to think bigger, unapologetically prioritize your self-care, and discover your true, authentic self. Think of me as your unfiltered but wise auntie who just wants the best for all of us. So grab your journal or maybe a glass of wine and let's get real. Welcome, Dr. Darcy, to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's Friday. We're recording this on a beautiful sunny Friday. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. We actually met in person over the summer, and we have, I feel like, a few things in common, including our tourist placements, which is nice. And you're in the holistic wellness space. So I want to just have you kind of talk about what you do, who you are, and what you offer here in San Diego.
Yes, awesome. I'm so excited to be here. I love how when we met, it just felt so organic and we just like really hit it off. And so I love that your podcast also brings that same essence to the digital space. So I'm excited to contribute that with you today. And so yes, I am a doctor. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. And I am also a spiritual healer with the Modern Mystery School in the lineage of King Solomon. So I do over 20 different modalities and offer life activations for people. And I have a really artistic approach to my holistic services. So I actually blend both of these disciplines in my practice. My main why for doing that and purpose behind it is I would love to just have more multidimensional people in the world because we're not just this physical body, we also have our spiritual essence. And so I really help people embody that in a way where they can feel their physical senses and they're also aware of their spiritual senses so they can feel that as well. And it's kind of like a spiritual nervous system with the life activation of like activating those different senses because our nervous system, to summarize, is basically just sensation and movement. So it's like with that, there can be like chemical signals, but there also can be movement signals, like I'm moving with my hand. And there's also the sensory signals of, hey, I'm talking to you, but I'm not falling over because my nervous system is helping me stay in balance. So the same thing with our spiritual essence. And so I really like to bring that alignment above and below for people to really thrive in their day-to-day life.
I love that. I love that so much. When did you get into, or actually, I like to always bring it back to like the inner child or your youth, because usually we have that connection to what we do in our adult life. So, did you have an idea when you were younger that you wanted to follow this path, or like were you always interested in the body and wellness, into spirituality?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll bring in all the flavors of my interests that we share, including astrology. So I have Saturn in my fourth house, conjunct my moon in Aries. And so all to summarize that into plain language, Saturn can be a really cold planet, and then the fourth house is like your home. And so it wasn't necessarily the most warm and fuzzy, like, oh, let me tuck you into bed kind of upbringing. I definitely had a lot of like early maturation in my upbringing for the best and the worst and all everything in between. But I will say it's definitely helped me have so much more compassion for people. And also it's helped me be stronger in a lot of ways that a lot of people aren't necessarily. And I know as humans, we all mirror those different attributes. And so I'm grateful for the people who are stronger in the areas I'm not strong in. But I will say, like, I definitely have always felt very compassionate and empathic. And so I am the youngest out of like six plus or minus seven. If I don't know. My parents have a yours, mine's, and ours kind of thing. And then there's some I grew up with, some I didn't. But let's just say six for easy numbers. And I was the only girl up until like 5 years old of age. And so
Wow.
it was a lot of, rough and tough with the bros, to say the least. And I definitely felt so like challenged internally because I'm like, oh well, I just want to play, I just want to connect, I want to be feminine, but there's these guys and they want to like kind of see who's the strongest or compete. And then also kind of tying it into like a nervous system lens too is like I literally do not have the certain developmental aspects to like even compete in the same way, but I still felt that pressure to do so because that's kind of like a masculine orientation. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just we all have masculine and feminine, but it's like, hey, we want to compete. We want to see who's like who's the best. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying, but like, I could barely hold like my own cup with one hand. I have to use two hands, for example. So I will say that that's where like a lot of my strength came from. It's like, okay, well, hey, like if I need to be strong and hold my ground, bet. But also I will say in my healing, and I get into that later, I've learned how to soften, and that's like an ongoing process. And I'm gonna be transparent about that. Like as an entrepreneur in California, in San Diego, in my first like 3 years of practice, it's a little ebb and flow of like, okay, like how can I really soften and not get into like an overdrive mode where it's just ones and zeros and finding the beauty in the and versus like yes but kind of thinking. So back to your original question, my dear. I will say I definitely have always felt pretty intuitive at an early age. I actually even used to see like ghosts at my old house. That's like a whole other, I never even talked about that on podcast, but it feels right to bring up today.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but ironically too, my parents have said they've seen and heard things that were not really happening. So I think we live in a haunted house for a little bit. But
Wow.
aside from that, I will say that I've definitely always been um like psychically in tune in an empathic way. So it's like, oh, my like I can see that even though no one was necessarily verbally expressing and their feelings, like I was really attuned, like, oh, like my mom is sad, oh my dad is sad, or oh, but I knew when they were angry. I'll say that was not I knew when they were angry. I also just definitely felt like a sensitivity. And so, with my healing and my own practice and experience, I'm getting to where I'm at today. It's been a process of just like reminding to keep the softness and the heart open because there's so many opportunities or even challenges that present themselves where it's like, hey, are we gonna keep it open or are we gonna close it? And then so it's like the beauty and the strength of keeping it open even when it's like it can hurt. That's just been a really big theme lately, so felt like sharing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think we can relate on that too. I don't know if we had talked about it when we first met, like us both being the youngest, and I also
Yeah.
have five siblings and yeah, not as many brothers, but that's crazy. Like that's crazy. I feel like there's definitely more women in my family, which can sometimes also be a challenge. You have a lot of feminine energy and all of that kind of clashing. But so growing up, did you know that you wanted to be a doctor? Like, was that ever like a thought for you?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I wanted to be in like some kind of health related field in a way. Well, there was that, and I also knew I wanted to be an artist. So it was interesting. Like I was like, I knew there was like this artist in me who wanted to create, and I used to draw and do a lot of stuff. But then I also did have like a scientific inclination. Like I loved biology. My mom is a registered nurse, and so I definitely had a little bit of like inspiration with that in the sense that, she would talk about her vitamin cabinet and like what she's taking and why she takes it and like she would also be pretty decent about like working out and stuff too, so I would actually work out with her every now and then. So I was like, oh, do I want to be like a fitness person? And I was like, well, not really, because I was a little athletically inclined. Like, I mean, I was a big fish in a really small pond, but I'm like, hey, I made it to CIF. I was I was out there, but I will say I just definitely felt like, hey, I wanted to help people. At the core of it all is like I wanted to help people, and like I wasn't really sure like what avenue I wanted to do that. And so I remember I shared with my mom. I was like, "Hey, I want to be like a nurse like you." So I was like, just I don't know. I was like 5 or something. I was like trying to be cute and connect with her. And she was just like, "Oh, like why do you want to be a nurse so you could be like abused by the doctors?" And I was like, "Oh my God, okay, that was not how I thought that conversation would go." But I was like, "Clearly I'm not going to be a nurse because that's not the way." I saw this quote on Instagram. It was like, "Growing up and maturing is realizing your mom was right, but she just could have adjusted her tone." That was one of those experiences.
Hmm.
Learning more about, I have some peers who I went to undergrad with who are nurses, and even I see some patients who are nurses, and I'm like, yeah, that's hardcore. That's hardcore. But I will say I was also encouraged to focus on education. So with that route, I find that there's a lot of tendency, hey, like doctor, lawyer, or like some kind of engineer. I am not a math person to this day. I'm still learning how to love the numbers and let the numbers love me. I love angel numbers.
Right, exactly.
But I will say like the linear math stuff, like my right brain just couldn't do that. And so all that being said, it's like I could just continue to explore like that interest in science. So it's like, okay, I went like an undergrad, I went to UC Berkeley in the Bay Area, and I was pre-med track. So all that means is like I was doing science classes, math classes, all the things that you would need to show to a medical school on your transcript, like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. And so I completed all those prereqs, but yeah, like the end of my sophomore year into my junior year, like I just hit a wall and I was like, oh my God, like I can't do this. Like I felt like a lot of like mental health challenges that I had a sense were there, but I didn't necessarily like had a name for it because it's just like how do you know what you don't know? Well, that was coming up and I realized I needed to change some things. Like I knew I needed to like get help in some way and also knew I needed to not do things that made me upset or not upset, but that I wasn't passionate about is a better way to say. Because it's so easy to force the self into a box. And so I was like, oh, I need to force myself into this box to get to this high ranking school. I forced myself into the box. I made it. Cool. And then I'm like, cool, I checked the little achievement, but my heart wasn't really in it. I was like, cool, I got the certificate, et cetera, et cetera. I just hit a point where like I couldn't do that to that capacity. And so I ended up switching my major to like African American studies because that was my minor. And at Berkeley, they don't let you minor in sciences. It's kind of like you either do it or you don't. So
Mm.
so I couldn't get a minor in science, but I also was just like, well, maybe I can use just to my advantage in some way of like getting my GPA, whatever. But I will say, in the midst of just trying to figure out what needed to change, I ended up seeing a chiropractor of all things. And the reason that happened was I lost my hearing, believe it or not. I was like 20, 21-ish, 2021. And like, I mean, the distance that my screen is from my face, like, we could be that far apart and you could say something. I was like, I cannot hear what you're saying. And I was like, this is crazy. This is so crazy. And like, I definitely had a party phase in undergrad, like a lot of people. I used to go to a lot of parties and raves and stuff. Just trying to escape the regular days of the semester because it was like, okay, cool, I get to live. And now I got to go back to my boss.
Yeah.
um, but not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's how I kind of really see it in hindsight of like, oh, what was really going on for me internally. But aside from all that, what my main point was regarding needing to shift and seeing a chiropractor, I was just under so much stress because I was like, oh my God, like I need to declare a major because they're not gonna let me graduate unless I declare a major. And I was really like having this internal grapple of like, okay, do I just suck it up and like push through these like next 2 years with this major and like people being like so conniving, like erasing people's names off of answers and like change. It was so crazy. Berkeley's a crazy place.
Wow.
Not even just like socially, but like academically, it's crazy. And so I was just like, I just couldn't get myself to do that. And so I knew that in the inside, but like I just couldn't take the actual action of like sending an email to whoever I needed to talk to declare. But I saw a chiropractor and I was like, cool, I'm on my parents' health insurance. Sweet. Let me just take advantage. And
Hmm.
so I just saw this lady. She was like walking distance. And I was like telling her about my dilemma. And she was just like, well, hey, you ever thought about being a chiropractor? And I was like, what? And she's like, well, you wanted to go to medical school. Like, how are you going to help people with medicine? And I was like, I don't know. I guess like drugs or surgery. Cause I'm like, that's what they do. And then she was like, well, what if you didn't have to help people with drugs or surgery? You can help them without that. And that really like opened up a new realm for me to think about. Cause it's like, hey, yeah, no, that's totally true. Like, she's doing that. She's helping people. She helped me. Like I got my hearing back after the adjustment and I started to feel better too. And then I was like, yeah, maybe you're onto something. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna just change my major. And she took me to a seminar, a chiropractic seminar in the Bay Area that was like 2 days or something. But I was like, oh, this is cool. It's really like integrated. There's like the mental component, there's the biochemicals, like all the biological stuff and the sciences that I love. And there's also this art component, which is like, oh, how do you apply this knowledge with the people that you work with? Because there's so many different types of chiropractic. And my style of chiropractic is very unique and niche, and we could get into that in a little bit. But I just love that. I was like, oh, cool. Maybe this is a way for me to be the scientist and the artist at the same time. And so that's how I found chiropractic school. I went to that seminar, and literally that same night I just applied to the college because I was like, all right, well, what else am I gonna do? Go to medical school? I really don't want to do that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, then I really just like full steam ahead. Things just happen so fast, and I always feel like when things happen fast, that means you're on the right track. So I was like, bet.
Wow, that's an interesting story. That's so crazy. That's very interesting. And I find it even more interesting. Okay, before we get too real into this conversation, I want to interrupt by inviting you to a very special event happening in 2026. I'm so excited to announce the Soul and Senses retreat in Bali, Indonesia. If you've been craving a reset, the kind that nourishes your body, calms your mind, and reconnects you to your purpose, then let me personally invite you to my retreat, Soul and Senses in Bali, happening April 7th to the 13th in 2026. We'll spend 6 nights in 2 luxury hotels in Seminyak, which is a beautiful, lively beach city. And then we'll spend 3 nights in Ubud, which is the jungle. It's spiritual, it's sacred, it's the place where you can really connect with your soul. We'll be surrounded by palm trees, soul aligned women, and the most beautiful energy that you've ever felt. You'll experience dance, somatic movement, deep stretching on a daily basis, healing and grounding practices, jungle excursions and private cultural tours, meditations, journaling workshops, and spiritual connection. There are plenty of nights where you can have fun and plenty of nights to also unplug. If you're feeling like, low key and you don't feel like going out, that's okay too. Our retreats are meant to help you follow your intuition and really give your body what it's craving at the time. It's safe, it's sacred, and it's exactly what you didn't know you needed. Spots are limited for this retreat and it's going to sell out. So if you're ready to reconnect with yourself in paradise, definitely make sure you go to our website. It's linked in the show notes. Or you can send me a DM saying Bali on Instagram and I'll send you the link to register. This is not just a vacation, it's a soul shifting experience. So if you're ready to step into the next version of yourself and connect with yourself on a deeper level while being in one of the most beautiful places on earth, then I invite you to book today and I'll see you there. Okay, so the scientific explanation versus maybe the spiritual explanation of you losing your hearing, like, did you have like an understanding of that at the time?
Ooh, I love this question. No one's ever asked me this question because I get asked how I felt chiropractic, and this is what happens. I tell people. So scientifically, I had so much tension at the base of my skull, like I could feel muscle knots, and like I was not even necessarily trained in anatomy. Um, I just was like, dude, like that's intense. Like I bought lacrosse balls on Amazon and I put them to try to rub them out. It just was not helping. Like it was just so tight. Like I even had trouble sleeping. Like it was just, oh my gosh, I was just like going through it. Also, there's this term called psychosomatic, which means that the things that you're thinking show up in your body. So I was like having like a psychosomatic response to like this decision of like, oh my God, like what am I gonna do? And even just like thinking about what that area does mechanically, the upper neck really helps with like most of your neck rotation. So if you're driving your car, you need to look over your shoulder. That's your upper neck that's doing that. And a lot of people, when they like, oh, I have a kink in my neck, I can't turn my head driving. Okay, well, we're gonna look in the upper neck. That area not being able to turn, it's like, whoa, I am like literally stuck. Like I'm in like a frozen like freeze response by not being able to do that. And then also like thinking about spiritually, it's like, well, in the Kabbalah, it talks about the different gates of the soul, and like your ears are one of them. And I'm like, dude, like I am having a spiritual challenge so hard because I cannot hear. Like the gates are closing, and also it's like even just thinking about intuition, right? Like some people have like a clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and to translate all that, clairvoyance is like you can see, clairaudience is you can hear, clairsentience is you can feel. I literally couldn't hear my own intuition, and I feel like that it was really what caused that that tug of war, that challenge, that internal turmoil. Because like I knew I didn't want to do this thing, but feeling that, oh, I need to, or I should, or like this is what I'm supposed to do, like those noises were just like clouding my own internal compass. And ironically enough, I got realigned, like literally, literally
Mhm.
got adjusted, got
Literally.
realigned, and I was like, whoa, I can hear again. And then I was like, oh, well, here's the thing, here's the way forward. You could try this, and da, da, da. And like, I was like, wow, you can't make it up. I was like, this could totally be like a story, like in a book, but it's my life.
Yeah, that is so crazy. Okay, so after you got adjusted, your hearing came back immediately, and then that same night you went and you applied for the chiropractic program. How soon after did you have to wait to see like if you got into it? Like how soon after did you start the program? And then like did you feel like you made the right decision like immediately?
Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So chiropractic colleges, for the most part, they're private. Let's just put it this way: it's easier to get into a chiropractic college than it is to get out with your degree. So,
Wow.
like, you can apply, and I had like there are prerequisites. Like, I already had my bachelor's degree, so check. I did all the prereqs for my medical school, which is like the same prereqs that anyone with a science degree would have to do. So check. Some people like they might get a conditional acceptance, like go take these classes, but that wasn't the case for me. I heard back pretty fast, like I would say like maybe like 2 weeks or so. And in submitting that, I did feel like I just felt like this sense of like calmness of like, okay, like this is the next step. Like that's just the best way I can like summarize it. It's like, oh, this is the next step. Duh, here we go. And so yeah, that definitely felt really good relative to just like the internal grapple. And I feel like caring about how you feel is so important to, I don't want to say like decision making in the sense that disregarding logic entirely, like, oh, I feel like I'm a bird, I'm gonna go try to fly. Like, don't do that. Please do not do that. But more, but more of the sense of like, I want to do this thing. Okay, well, like, what comes up? Is there a sense of like tension of like, oh, I should, I shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. Because then it's just like, okay, well, where does the clarity, like, how can the clarity come? And a lot of that just comes in like, okay, like really centering the self and like connecting to a higher purpose and vision and like an intuition. So for me, it was like, I mean, I wasn't really like super spiritually inclined at that point in my life, but I will say I just felt like a sense of like, oh, this is the sign I've been looking for. And also just like, oh wait, there was a clarity of like, hey, I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to do something in the health field. This is all of that. I was like, I don't really want to have to deal with like residency and like working 12-hour shifts from like 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. or something crazy. I just didn't want to do that. And I was like, oh, cool. I don't have to do the more things I don't want to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
could just go straight closer to the thing I want to do. And I will say too, I was just observing at the conference, like most of the people and like the people I was talking to. And, as a chiropractor, in any profession, other people because everyone needs to do a certain amount of like continuing education credits a year. So that seminar turned out to be one of those for the doctor I was with. So she was introducing me to some of her colleagues. And I was like, hey, you know what? They all look pretty healthy in the sense like they're not like super like obese, like they don't look unhappy or like they look like they're living purposefully, just to
Mm-hmm.
summarize. And I was like, I was drawn to that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, because I see so many people in jobs that like they hate or they don't like. And it's like I felt like that would have been the case for me had I just like went down that same rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm gonna either become a researcher. I tried that out for a little bit. I was like, this is so not. I was like, I need to talk to people. I'm like, I am not like the most extroverted person in the world, but I will say I do love a good conversation and I do love like humans. And so like I was like, yeah, man, I don't know, like counting these, whatever. It's just I'm not gonna try to count bugs. I'm not trying to count cells and whatever. But
Yeah.
anyways.
I feel like that's like your Taurus and your Gemini placement. Is your
Yeah.
Gemini rising? Yeah. Like Geminis, yeah, they need to like be in communication with people. Like, and as much as I feel like they love like, they can like nerd out and they love that type of stuff, but like, yeah, Geminis need to be around people. Taurus too. Taurus love to talk and like connect with people. So that makes so much sense.
Yeah, yeah, like my Gemini's in Venus, and Venus is like the connection planet. So it totally makes sense. Like, oh, I just want to actually like connect. And it's like, yeah, like there's like such a playful nature that element that needs to be there. So I find that what I love about at least being in practice and also just being able to meet people, it's like cool. I can like have like playful, fun conversations. I couldn't do that in a lab, like with the coat and it's cold. They're all cold and there's no windows. I was
Mm,
like, man, I'm like the tourist bus. Like I need a window with some natural light.
yes. Exactly. So I want to ask you because for me, when I first got into getting adjusted, this was probably like honestly 20, maybe like around 2014, 2015 when I first started teaching Zumba. And I think I might have shared with you that I have a herniated disc and I had found out around that time when I was going to the chiropractor. It was just like they had like a setup within the gym and they were trying to get like the members to go in there and whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me try it out. Let's see what's going on. And at the time, the chiropractor had advised me to go and then get the MRI. And then I found out about the injury. But I feel like there was almost like this skepticism with a lot of people in the gym of like going to the chiropractor, and they were kind of like, oh, I don't know if that works. And I had heard this a lot from like other people, around me, like, oh, I don't know, like, is that like a thing that makes a difference? And I was willing to try it. I was willing to try it, and I did find that there was for sure like relief. Obviously with the injury, me finding that out, like that wasn't something that was I had to do more than just get adjusted with that. And then over the years, being able to manage that injury with other modalities. And then also, I do feel like there's a spiritual side to that as well with like back pain. But did you have any preconceived notions or just like judgments of chiropractors? Because I feel like there are a lot of people who are just like, oh, no, that's not a real thing. So, like, what were your thoughts prior to getting into the program about chiropractor?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of skepticism, and I feel like it depends on the region that you're in. But like ironically, so I grew up in a really small town called like Apple Valley. I mean, it's getting there like every other place in California. People are trying to like, where can we go and buy a house? Um, probably Apple Valley. Anyways, and so that like I actually saw a chiropractor in high school. But like the impression of that I got is kind of similar to like that mainstream consciousness that you're referring to, which was like I was like, hey, I don't know. I mean, they're a chiropractor, they're a doctor, but like, are they a real doctor? I don't know. I didn't really like ask them that because I was like, I don't want to be like disrespectful. Like they're gonna adjust my body. I want them to like me.
Right.
But I will say I had a little bit of that because I like ironically like kind of going back to that like it's self ignorance but also like self like in the sense of like ignoring your inner voice. Like I had several moments in undergrad where I was like, yeah, maybe I should be a chiropractor. Like I don't know, because I was like, I don't know all these other stuff, but I was like, no, they're not a real doctor. Whatever. Just like the standard common thought. But I will say, like, I went there because my aunt, who's a nurse as well, was like, oh, it looks like you might have a little bit of scoliosis. She did this thing called Adam's test, which they used to do in like middle school, where they would have like girls have like their sports bra on or whatever, and they would like have them bend forward and see what their back's doing. So she saw I had a little bit of a curve, and so she's like, oh, you should go see a chiropractor. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't know. My aunt, she's a nurse. She seems smart. Like I don't know. And I was like, oh, hey, dad. He's like, oh, we have insurance. Like, great. I don't know what that means because, I don't know. Money isn't real as a kid. And like, to me, it wasn't like I didn't have a
Right.
concept of it. It was just like, I just asked my parents and they either tell me yes or no. Like,
Hmm.
that's it. And so, yeah, so I found that we had a chiropractor there. And so in that experience, like in hindsight, I can see how different, like how unique it is to each individual because that practice didn't really talk too much about the philosophy of chiropractic. Like some chiropractors are really philosophically based, meaning like they're really into what we call chiropractic green books, which is written by the founder and developer of chiropractic, which talks about, oh, like, hey, there's a spiritual like uniting man, the spiritual with man, the physical is like part of the adjustment. I didn't hear any of that when I was seeing the other guy, but I did just kind of have that sense of like, okay, cool, they're good at something that I don't understand and they're helping me and I don't really understand. There wasn't really a lot of education. So, with that being said, though, like it just kind of kept it more nebulous, if anything, aside from what the broad public thinks about, which is like, oh, they're not a real doctor. Oh, they're a quack or like it's woo woo. But I will say, like, when I got to chiropractic school, I was kind of like, oh my God, this is so cool. How come nobody, like, I was like, why is nobody, why don't more people know about, like, how cool chiropractic is? And then, of course, like, after graduating and being in the profession for a while now, I'm like, oh, well, there's just a lot of different experiences that people have. And I wouldn't claim it to be my mission by any means, but some people, they're like, hey, I really want to help create a unified message about this for people for public education, which I think is important, but also it's kind of like people are going to have different experiences depending on where they go. And it all depends on who they see and why they see them. Because I've had people even come to see me and they're expecting things, and I'm like, probably not the best office for you, honey. But also, that's the beauty of it. I would say like the beauty and the is also the downfall, which is like there's such a uniqueness to the individual. But with that, it's like how can people have a shared understanding of what it is? Kind of like if you go to a dentist, you know what's gonna happen. They're probably gonna take some x-rays, they're probably gonna do a cleaning, maybe you need some dental work. But chiropractic, that's not always the case because there's just such a wide range of why people do what they do. Kind of going back to that philosophy I was mentioning earlier. And there's also, I guess, just like logistics too, because like for example, a gold standard for a while was like taking x-rays. I'm actually in the process of studying for my x-ray permit, but I don't have the space in my office for an x-ray machine at this current moment. So it's
Hmm.
like I would love to do that. But I will say the beauty of being in like where I'm at, which is like in a city, there's plenty of places where I can send people to get imaging done. And with my education, I can read the images and explain it to the person. But it's just like even that's a different experience versus, oh, I'm going to that office and they're doing the x-rays there. So kind
Yeah.
of like a long-winded answer, but just diversity of humans, diversity of practice, diversity of experiences, it all can make a difference, but generally most people don't understand it because of that wide range.
Yeah. I'm curious about your specific approach. Like when people come to you and say I came to you and I'm like, "Hey, my trap and like my neck on my left side is like bothering me. I've been stressed out with like work and I haven't really been exercising, but I've been going on like walks." So when people come to you, are you automatically assessing maybe like just their lifestyle or like what's currently happening in their life, or are you getting more of like a backstory and then kind of tying that into the spiritual aspect of like maybe the deeper things that might be going on in their lives?
Ooh, okay. I love this question. I literally was having a conversation with a newer practice member about this the other day. And so I do a little bit of both. So like I mentioned before, my main bread and butter is like, hey, you have your physical body, you have your spiritual body, and then you also have this thing in between called your life. And so I really look at the relationship, because everything in life is so relational. And so it's like, what's the relationship between these areas of your life? Like I ask so many questions on my intake. It seems irrelevant, but the reason I do that is like, and I tell people this is like when we do your progress evaluation, I want to compare what things you place then versus now in the sense of like, hey, like what percent of the time do you feel stressed out in your day? Some people it's 100%, some people it's like 10, but sometimes with that it's like it's 10, but there's not that actual connection in with the body and what's happening and what the feelings are to realize that that 10 is probably like 80. But
Mm,
sometimes it's really like no, it's actually really 10, but it's like that's very few and far in between. Yeah, I do care about like what your lifestyle is. That's important. It does play a factor because there's things called endorphins, which means like they help you feel good. And those really only come if you're like doing activities and or eating, but you don't want to only eat or only do activities. You need to have that happy medium. Um,
yeah.
Kind of like you need a gas pedal and a brake pedal. And so with that, it's like, okay, I want to know what you're doing, but also most importantly, I want to know where you want to go. That is like my biggest inquiry with people because it's like if I can help anyone feel better yesterday, I would. But the reality is our bodies take time to adapt. And so that adaptability is easier when you're younger. Like I do have some children that I see and I'm like, yeah, we want to see people at a certain frequency to help those changes happen and kids can get away with like a little bit less earlier because they're growing so fast. But sometimes adults are the same. It just depends. And which is why I'm like, okay, what are you doing your day to day? What's your stress levels like? Because if you're like somewhat retired and literally your only job is to keep yourself mobile and like active, you're going to get very different results than if you're like, you're an entrepreneur and you just relocated across the country and now you're like trying to like start a whole new life. Like that's a whole different ball game of stress. And then the thing about stress too, it's like you cannot control the outside as much as you might want to, or even think, or even hope. And I'm saying this as a reminder to myself too. But you really can only control the inside in the sense of like your ability to respond, your ability to assess, your ability to really think clearly, and most importantly, your ability to be like in your body more than just only mentally thinking yourself into like a neck pain, or thinking yourself into not being able to sleep at night, or thinking yourself into a panic attack even, like that's real too. And so with that, it's like that mind body integration comes with, hey, what is my body really trying to tell me? Because like, yeah, I have this trap, but like, what is it really saying? Because it's like I've seen over like 20,000 people, because I've worked in several clinics throughout my own practice building journey. And so with that, it's like I've been in the position where it's like, okay, cool, turn your head to the right, look up, I'm gonna adjust your rib one. And then next thing I know, they come back like a few days, they're like, oh hey, this is out. And so it's this is where the philosophy comes in, because in one end it's like, okay, are they holding their adjustment, meaning like, is their body adapting and integrating that that bone needs to be in that place to keep it there. But then on one end too, it's like you can't hold the life. And so that's where like I don't necessarily bring that terminology into my practice, because it's like life is so dynamic, ever changing, ever growing. It's a wild ride.
Hmm.
You got
It's a Wild West,
it's
girl.
a wild
Wild.
west, seriously. And so it's like, yeah, there are times and places where things are going to stabilize, and like, your trap isn't really active, and like things kind of feel like they're cruising, things are in a good space. But then maybe there's like some event that comes up, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I had like this other practice member is like, oh my God, I'm planning my mother's 80th birthday party, and it's like I was so chill, but now I'm stressed because like all the things. And so there's a greater demand. And so it's like, okay, well, like think of like your resources as like a gas tank. What's your reservoir like? Is it low? Is it high? Has the check engine light been on? Like where are you?
Hmm.
Which is why I ask a lot of questions, because I'm like, okay, like what's the situation? What has the situation been up until the day that you're in the office? And then also it's like, okay, well, like what do you want to accomplish, or like what do you want your life to look like in like 6 to 9 months, 6, 9, 12 months or so? Because that's a whole other way of thinking, because it's like, okay, well, say for example, we're in the situation still with the birthday party. It's like, okay, well, that birthday party is gonna come and go at some point. At some
Right.
point. So then what's the foundation like when that's passed? And so back to the concept of holding, it's like, well, my goal is to help you establish a new baseline. And so what that means is like, okay, like a lot of the developer of the practice I do, his name is Donnie Epstein. He talks about this concept called a prior minimal state. And so what that means, it's like it's very much so in the medical model of like, okay, like you had restricted range of motion, and like, we're using the analogy of the trap. So say you have restricted range of motion in your neck, you can't quite turn full to the left or full to the right. Okay, cool. We do some adjustments. We do a couple of hot packs or whatever, electric stimulation. We're going to have you look to your left, look to your right. Okay, cool. You're back to maximum recovery. You're good. But it's like you always got to get your car aligned. Why would you not get your body aligned? And it's just like, even just like a road trip, you don't know how many potholes you're going to hit. Same thing.
Hmm.
Like same thing with the week, you do
Yeah.
not know how many potholes you're going to hit, if any. And so it's like, okay, is your baseline at a state of like, oh my God, I'm gonna hit a pothole. When's the next pothole coming? Okay, well, you're not gonna enjoy your trip. You're not gonna get very far. You're gonna constantly need to like reassure yourself that you're safe, versus like, hey, your baseline is like, all right, cool. Hey, if there's a pothole, I know I got a spare tire. I know how to change a tire. I got AAA. Like you have more resources beyond just the gas tank itself. Like you know that you can get creative. You know that you can ask for help, even because that can be a stress for people too. Kind of back to that relationality aspect of like, oh, what's your relationship? Like, do you feel worthy of help? Do you feel like you live in like a kind universe where people can and are willing to help you? I mean, granted, there's still, there's always people who are like not about that life. But then there's also people it's like, hey, maybe it's not the right time, life happens for other, like in different ways for different people. So it's just like, ultimately, how do you have that baseline be like really strong of a foundation? So that way, like, no matter where you go, you can always have like a place to reset to more than just I can turn my head left and right and I'm happy with that.
Kind of like a self-care toolkit, I like to call it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, yes, so it's like helping your nervous system learn the tools. And I like to use the analogy of like a language, learning the language of your nervous system. And most people, like, and it's just like kind of a byproduct of like where we live in like modern society. It's like we're not even connected to our breath. Like most people are like probably like, oh, I didn't even know I wasn't breathing. And it's like, yeah, because you weren't. So a lot of times people start to notice like, oh, my breathing is getting better, but that changes so many things because your breath is one of those foundational parts of your nervous system regulation toolkit, if you will. Because it's like if you're not breathing, well, then like your breath's going to be shallow, or maybe you're breathing weird, meaning like you're breathing in your chest versus your belly. And it's going to make your neck muscles work like breathing muscles when you have a whole abdomen to do that, so it's like that stresses the neck muscles. So there's just like a lot of interconnected pieces that when those parts are really like established with proper mechanical function and also awareness, going back to where I mentioned the nervous system is like sensory and motor at its foundation. Like, oh, can I actually sense my body doing things? And then like the range that grows with that is pretty remarkable in the sense of beyond just can I look both ways with full range. It could even be like, oh, can I set my body self-regulating, which is part of what the objective is with people I work with. And what I mean by self-regulating, it's more than just like, oh, I'm in a stressful meeting at work and like my heart rate didn't even flinch. Like that's cool. But it's also more of like, this is just like a hypothetical, but like, oh, I know every time I'm doing a podcast, my trap gets really tight. So it's one thing to be mentally aware of that, but it's another thing to have such a refined connection of the mind and body that you can breathe and like your shoulder kind of resets itself back into place. And it's like your nervous system is capable of that to a certain degree, which is one of the many promises of network spinal. It's like your body doesn't necessarily always need to be snap, crackle, pop back into place. It can learn how to connect and release tension before it becomes a like a fixated pattern where it's like, okay, well now I have like a super hardcore tech neck with my head like way far over my shoulders and I have headaches all the time. Yeah.
This is so interesting. I just love your view on it because yeah, I've been to two chiropractors. I would say the first one I went to when I first went in 2014, he was just more, I guess, more focused on like just the body and like the solution of that and why I was feeling the back pain and whatever. And just having like a routine and more of like structure surrounding like coming in and then whatever I'm doing outside of seeing him. The second one I saw, he was a little bit more like interested in the lifestyle, and because he knew I was a dancer and all that, like he was a little bit more, I guess, interested in like what I was doing. But you're definitely one of the first chiropractors I've met. I mean, I haven't met many, but you're definitely the first where there is like this deeper meaning to what's happening with the body and the nervous system. And I feel like now nervous system regulation has kind of become trendy. It's like such a trendy conversation. Like, oh my God, like, yeah, I was with this guy and like I just noticed like my nervous system was so regular. Like, okay, girl, like, what is, So now I feel like it's such a trendy topic of conversation, but it's also a really important conversation because we weren't taught this being younger. And like you said, even bringing up like the Adams test, I remember doing that at the doctor of just like bending over. And a lot of kids do have bad posture, like just naturally, and especially now, oh my God, like these kids are just like down in their phone all day or just like their shoulders and they're not even talking to people. It's so weird. So I feel like it's more than just the posture. Like you said, it's more than just do I have a stressful day, but more like, okay, how can I have these things in my toolkit, or how can I have the awareness of being like, okay, I'm not breathing, and I notice that when I'm not breathing, like my chest gets tight or my shoulders, are pulling up to my ears. So I love that approach of just like having that awareness and having the tools to come back. So with that, do you see patterns? I'm sure that you do, like, see patterns with people coming in, maybe having the same issues or the same type of pain or discomfort. And are you able to tie that in to maybe something that they're experiencing on a deeper level, whether that's like mental, spiritually?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I love everything that you just shared right now. Like so three things. So one, it's like, with this framework of chiropractic, there's like a saying, and it's like the tension, shape, and tone of your spine is the tension, shape, and tone of your life. So it's like even just thinking about those poor like adolescent kids who are just like, always hunched over. And you think about the mental health statistics, they're like so low in terms of like poor in the sense of like being high in depression and high in anxiety relative to like feeling like optimistic. That's what I mean by like poor. And so it's like those rates have gone up, and like people have said this, but it's like, we're more connected than ever, but we're also more disconnected than ever. Like we've lost touch with like the sacredness of life and the sacredness of like true connection and true relationship. So I have a sense that, with the rise of like AI being all over the place, it's like, well, how do we really discern what's real and what's not? Well, we're going to have to come back to the basics, which is face-to-face communication. Like I was there, I said it, I'm an eyewitness. That video is fake or whatever. That's a whole other topic. Back to the patterns. Yeah, so there's like 10 patterns, spinal cord patterns. So what also makes network unique and different from traditional chiropractic, it's like it's non slow force. So I'm not snap crackling popping people. I do adjust sometimes, like I do adjust extremities. Sometimes I do adjustments at certain places in care where it would be really beneficial. But with that, it's like the spinal cord is like the back of your mind. So if you think of like basically from like your temples up, like this is like your prefrontal cortex, which is your executive part of your functioning. It's the part of your brain that's like, all right, Marissa, we're doing the podcast September 12th, book it. But then there's also the other parts of our brain that we can't really control. It's like the part of our brain that's responsible for us feeling hungry. It's the part of the brain that's like, hey, it's time to go to bed. All those other things that we do, but we don't think about. And so a lot of times people have a shutdown from that prefrontal cortex, and they're kind of living in their limbic reptilian brain of like, oh my God, like, am I gonna die if I go there? Like, am I gonna die if I ask for help? Or am I gonna die if I like send that text message or that email or that job application, Like it doesn't match the extremeness of the response doesn't match the risk of the actual action. And so that often has to correlate to muscles. And I say muscles because muscles are where like the emotions live. So it's like looking at the spinal cord, I like to give an analogy of like, okay, we're on a group project. So let's just say you're in my office, like, all right, Marissa, you have a group project. There's three team members. You have your nervous system, which is like your brain and spinal cord. You have your skeletal system, which is like your bones, and you have your muscular system, which is your muscles. All of them need to be participating. They all need to be in relationship in order for you to be your best self. Because it's like any group project, if one person's doing all the work, oh my God, like it's not going to be a good time.
Are you tired of stressing over meal prep, grocery shopping, and figuring out what to cook every single night? I know I am, child, okay? I am not trying to be slaving over the kitchen stove and worrying about washing dishes every single night. It's too much. Running a business is enough for me, honey. So allow me to introduce you to Cook Unity, your personal chef at your fingertips. Cook Unity delivers chef-crafted meals straight to your door, made with high-quality, fresh ingredients. Whether you're craving a hearty pasta, a healthy grain bowl, or something gourmet, there's something for every palate. These recipes are authentic, full of flavor, and created by local chefs who love food just as much as you do. As someone who's always on the go, whether it's teaching fitness classes, choreographing routines, or spending quality time with my friends or my pup, I love how Cook Unity saves me time without sacrificing flavor or nutrition. Plus, I get to try dishes from top chefs that I wouldn't normally have access to. So I can literally switch it up from Chinese to Mexican to Italian to Caribbean. I love it. I love it. I love it. No more takeout guilt, no more boring leftovers, just real delicious meals made just for you. So if you're ready to elevate your weeknight dinners, then head on over to cookunity.com and use my code MarTong00 to get $60 off your first order. I will put that in the show notes for you so you can get easy access and take you right to the website. Don't forget, put your order in right now, okay? Because they need to know what you're ordering. So even if you don't have the time to put your order in, they will go based off your preferences and your first questionnaire when you go to the website, and you can set up literally like your dietary needs, if you have any allergies, anything like that. So go right now, okay? Cook Unity. This is where convenience meets culinary creativity.
And so with that, it's like my goal is to help create more coherence within all these aspects of your nervous system. Because yeah, the nervous system controls every cell, tissue, organ in your body, but also it's like, well, what are the tissues, what are the cells doing? And so I like to look at those three systems together, because some people might have more tension in the neck, maybe like they breathe different, or maybe in the low back, like maybe they have like a disc injury, like like you shared. And so like the body adapts to those injuries over time. But with the patterns, I'm gonna answer your question, I promise. So with the patterns,
You're fine,
uh,
girl.
so with the patterns, it depends, because sometimes there's more patterns in the neck or in the pelvis. And so, nervous system is like a buzzword, but it's like, okay, look, if you can't name those cranial nerves, I don't want you telling me anything about
I love that. I love that
it.
response. I'm gonna start saying that to people, like, name the cranial or you're not regulated. Name the part of the
Oh my
body.
gosh, like please, like they have names. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so like with that, it's like the parasympathetics of your nervous system are like the brakes. Your sympathetics are like the gas. And so we don't want to be too much brake, too much gas, because we can't go anywhere. We could go far, but then it's like, okay, well now we didn't think to fill up because we didn't brake to pull into the gas station. Or it's like, oh man, we had the brakes on, but everything's idle, like we're not actually going anywhere. So sometimes people can get into like a sympathetic freeze, or like there's all sorts of different like vagal nerve theory.
Would that be considered like fight or flight?
Yeah, yeah. So they're different. They're like subcategories of fight or flight. So it's like, oh, you can have like, for example, like high functioning anxiety, often connected with like, oh, being in like sympathetic dominant, where it's like, oh my gosh, like I just can't turn off. Like I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. And then when I get back home, it's like, still wired. But the patterns too, like it all depends, because with those patterns that I was mentioning earlier, so like there's 10, like five of which are like special classifications, but there's five main ones. So one, it's like in the neck. So it's like, okay, this has to do with time and trust. And so sometimes the upper neck has to do with time, and then the lower neck is like connected with like relationships, confrontation, or even anger. And so even like the posture changes. So I'm just gonna like turn myself to the side. Like if I'm stressed about time, or if I'm having like issues in my neck might be really forward like this.
Mm.
But also it's like this is kind of like a fighter stance, right? It's like, oh, I'm hunched down, I'm ready to I'm
Mm-hmm.
wearing black and I'm in a black chair. That was not, I mean, I hope you saw something.
I saw
Okay, cool. But yeah, so it's like your posture literally changes. And like I've even seen in my own like healing journey with this kind of care, people get like major changes with like how like their mental state, with their head not being that far forward, because it really only takes about 3 to 6 inches of tension like in this direction for your biochemistry to change in
it.
your brain signal to your body, and your body signal to your brain. There is this neurosurgeon Alf Bragg who did a lot of research, and he saw that a lot of people who had like chronic diseases, it actually started in the spinal cord, and those tensions in the spinal cord disrupted the signal to those tissues and organs, and like they couldn't properly regulate. But aside from that, that can also happen in the pelvis too. And so with that, it's like, well, the pelvis, we want to think of like identity, but there's also different segments of the triangle part of your bone. It's kind of like that. The triangle part of your bone. It's called your sacrum. And so there's like different segments on there, and those have a different connection with different parts of the body too. And so I teach a lot of classes to just dive more into that, because there's so many layers. We could probably do like a whole series of podcasts talking about it. But just to summarize, like the neck, I think of trust. The pelvis, I think of like identity, or even like courage or victimization, because the tailbone is another place a lot of people carry tension. And there's like a lot of fancy, not want to say fancy, they're just like sensationalization. YouTube and Instagram videos of people adjusting people's tailbone and like them having like really crazy emotional responses. And it's like, well, that's just such a tender area because when your spine is developing, it's one of the first bones to develop. So it's really, it has a lot of memories of like when you're developing the uterus, but also too, it's just like a delicate area just based on the geography and the real estate around there, you know. Like a lot of people have like woundings around like, you know, having their boundaries of their body like violated. And so like a lot of times people might tuck their tailbone down. And that's kind of like if you think of a dog tucking their tailbone down when they're afraid or whether like when they're scared they're gonna get hurt. And so not that we're dogs, we're humans, but I'm just using like visual analogies for the listeners and for yourself so that way the connection can be made about that information about the energy or the emotion and the posture, how that also shows up in other areas of day-to-day life.
Oh my God, that's so relatable. And I'm sure that's so relatable to so many people who listen to this podcast. Like, because our audience is mostly women. And when you said that, I automatically thought about like sometimes just like walking past men that I feel like they're like looking at me or just like I don't want them to talk to me. And I feel like my whole posture changes. Like, I'll try to like tuck my tailbone to hide like my butt or, like it's
Yeah,
real.
it's real.
It's so real. That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, like that awareness of yourself because you're a dancer, so you kind of have to be more aware of your body than the average person. So yeah, like it sounds like you're even like aware of how that even has happened in the past. It's like, oh wow, like different areas, I'm doing different things. It's interesting to pay attention to that more too, because it's like people who are under care too, like they'll notice like, oh, I went to like a yoga class and like my body was like doing like this wave thing, and the wave thing is like the self-regulating thing. Or they'll say like, "Oh, I noticed like I'm just like breathing deeper and I'm like sighing." And it's like, "Well, it's good. It's good to make sounds." Like with expression, like sound and expression are like interconnected and so often we get shamed whether it's like, you know, as a child like children are to be seen not heard, that kind of lingo, or maybe even just feeling like just like unsafe to say anything. So it's like, "Oh, well, if we can breathe and make a sound, sound is energy, energy is vibration, and that is going to help kind of give like an internal sound bath is what I like to say is like making those sounds. So a lot of times people make it sounds in the office. Sometimes they might cry because that tension and that energy is being released because it's like thinking of the energy and information and like what's the relationship to like the movement and the sensation. It's like, okay, well, like how do we integrate energy and how do we integrate information? Because we're constantly taking in information all the time, right? Like so for example, like walking down the street, okay, I have the information. There's one thing to have the information of like, okay, there's a group of gentlemen. It's another thing to have the energy, like, okay, are they like just, you know, there's different cats on the street, if you will. And so it's just like, okay, can I like trust myself to be okay, or can I like, or you know, it's just like a different level of awareness that comes with being able to express freely and also feel safe enough to like acknowledge and feel the things.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's definitely something I like to incorporate like in my dance classes too, like just checking in like, is everyone breathing? Like, please breathe,
Yeah.
like. And I don't have like the exact science behind it, but I feel like your breathing is almost connected to the function of your brain. So, like, if you're holding your breath, right, like that's not going to allow your brain to function in the way that it needs to. Like, if you are trying to pick up choreography or you're trying to focus on something in particular, even like, public speaking or, something like that. Like, if I'm sitting here and I'm not breathing, it's like, okay, wait, what are we talking about? So I feel like it does have that effect on the brain. Can you also maybe just tie in before we wrap, like how does breathing tie into obviously the nervous system, but just feeling like maybe you're capable of doing something? Like I feel like there's a lot of people who might feel, like stuck or that they're
Mm.
not able to do something that might be a little bit more challenging or uncomfortable. How can they incorporate that breathing to allow them to feel, more empowered?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. Yeah. So, it's definitely part like your just to touch in some of the science part, like your breath is like in your midbrain area, which is responsible for it's like a subconscious area. But the interesting thing is like there's like the motor nerves that go there means we can kind of control it, which is why like there's times where you're not thinking about your breath and you're still breathing, hopefully. And then there's times where you're thinking about your breath, but you're changing the rhythm of it. And so the rate at which you breathe has a connection to like how much information you could take in. Because thinking about it from the perspective of like, okay, I'm breathing shallow. Well, that's like a little bit of like a panting kind of thing. And it's like, okay, so if you slow the breath down, you're giving your nervous system the reminder that okay, it's safe, which means with safety, it's like, okay, well, what comes with safety? Oh, that means I can play. So it's like thinking about the choreography. It's like, oh, okay, I'm safe. This is just like I'm just playing with the movements. I'm playing with my body doing these things versus like not getting enough oxygen, not feeling like the area is safe enough to like take in the new information. It's easier to get further into fight or flight, which is like, oh my God, I need to get out of here. Something bad's gonna happen versus parasympathetic, which is like rest, digest, and even sex, and sex is creation too. So it's like, oh, like if my brain and my body are in this state of like, oh wait, I could play with this, then it just opens up that possibility for more expression, which means like, oh, okay, well, like she says to put some more of like some attitude into it. Okay, well, what if I did this? Oh, whoa, I didn't even know I could do that. Because sometimes too, it's like areas in our body that don't like to do certain moves. It could be like a breath blockage too, because every time we breathe, our fascia is responding. And so areas that are really tight, there's not a lot of breath that goes into there, and the fascia tends to be like, I like to use the analogy of like saran wrap on a frozen steak. And so it's like, okay, like it's like such a great visual because more like even if you're vegan, whatever, you've seen frozen steak in the Ziploc bag or like, in the airtight bag. So like it's like, okay, our muscles, our meat, so like our meat suits, if they're really tight, they're gonna be like not really moving, which means there's not gonna be a lot of blood flow. Like you can't cut a frozen steak. And even if you were able to, there's no blood that comes out because it's frozen. And so with the breath, it helps to make sure that those tissues are moving because the fascia starts to move around there and then the muscles start to actually contract and relax with the breath as well, which is going to get that blood flow. And then with that blood flow, it's like, oh, the joints in that area can actually like move in that direction. So,
And
yeah.
that's why like the whole birth process is like so heavy on breathing, which is crazy. Even like,
Yeah.
oh my God, girl, like yesterday. So I get every now and then, like every couple months, I'll get like a really bad period. My cramps are always bad, but I'll get to the point where I'm like throwing up and I'll get like nauseous. Like, I kid you not, like my cramps feel like contractions and I don't even know what that feels like, but it's crazy. So I've been really intentional over the past few years of just like, okay, how can I try at least without like jumping to the Advil right away to like at least try to breathe and relax my body. And it's hard, I'm not gonna lie, but like I'm kind of like, if I want to have kids one day, like I gotta kind of prepare myself for this. And so I've definitely been trying. So yesterday was like one of those days where my cramps are so bad. And I was like, okay, let me at least put the heating pad on, like, relax the muscles and then just try to breathe, put on some like relaxing music. And I find that it does help. And then sometimes you gotta just do the Advil. But that's definitely a relatable thing. I thought of that when you were talking about the steak of like, yeah, like sometimes you kind of just need to relax the body and breathe through it and allow the circulation to just hit.
Yeah. The circulation hit different when you breathe, right?
Right. Exactly. Darcy, this was such a good conversation. I am so excited I feel like we need to do a collab. Like we talked, before, but like I'm excited on actually collabing with you here in San Diego and possibly doing some somatic, breath work workshop. We'll definitely talk about it, but please tell the people where they can find you on social media, if they're in SoCal area, where they can find you to come get adjusted and how they can work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful we were able to meet, and it was so much fun talking with you on today's show. And yeah, so I am in San Diego. I am in like the closer to San Diego proper area, so like Hillcrest, Bankers Hill. You can find me at Source Connection, chirolight.com. That's my website. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Dr. Darcy, Darcy, White, like the color, White. That's like my main Instagram page. And then I have my business page, which is source connection underscore Cairo Light. And yeah, I mean, I'm hosting workshops every first Friday of the month. I'm hosting a workshop. And then second Sundays, I'm doing workshops as well. So You follow me at Dr. Darcy White. You can click on my link tree and see all the latest and greatest upcoming events. And I'm also excited to collaborate on some good fun stuff for our community out here.
Yes, exciting. And we will link everything in the show notes for you guys that are listening and you want to connect with Dr. Darcy. If you guys love this episode, make sure you rate and review the podcast, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple. Drop a comment. You can also now drop comments on Spotify. So let us know your favorite part of this conversation today. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, drop a comment as well. Share this episode with a friend, share it with someone who maybe needs to just tap into their breath, their body. They might be feeling, stressed out. They're going through some things right now. Send this to them. Okay. Or maybe you're someone who is aspiring to be a chiropractor and you're looking for some more information. So I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. Dr. Darcy, thank you so much again for taking the time to chat with me today. And we will see you guys in another episode. Bye.